This time, I got to see every step of the process, and there were some steps that I had never seen before. I realized just how many people are involved. I definitely learned many new things. Originally, everything, including the fabric, was made in the United States. The entire process, from knitting to sewing, took place there. We really struggled with that. Made in USA is very appealing, and American cotton as well. I really felt that this was something we did not want to lose, but it became difficult to maintain the quality we were looking for. There were various conditions involved, but when we thought about all of that, Japan's sewing techniques and quality control techniques were extremely high, and that was really the most important point. As for the material itself, American cotton is very durable and high in quality. So I think our current products came from keeping that strength while combining the best parts of both sides.
Hello, my name is Suzuki, the factory manager.
My name is Kanaya from sales.
First, when the yarn arrives, the person in charge manages the yarn. The people who send that yarn into the factory, the setting where the yarn is placed on the yarn racks, and then what we call dome, which means keeping the amount of yarn fed in one rotation consistent, adjusting the tension so that it can be knitted in the best possible state. That is handled by the maintenance team, including myself. The maintenance team manages all of that. Once we decide that it is ready to start, with no defects, and that it is in a condition where mass production can begin, we hand it over to the knitting team. After that comes inspection and then shipping. That is the overall flow through which we produce at the factory.
I had not really had many chances to take out the needles or look closely inside, so even now I still cannot really imagine how it works, knitting with such precise, fine needles. But the fact that they pay attention to even the slightest tension and measure every one of the thousands of yarns is truly amazing.
It is called air-spun yarn. It has existed for a long time, but now it is made in a more refined way. This method has become more mainstream, but it still has a slightly uneven feel. It is a bit rough. When that becomes fabric, it changes into a very distinctive texture. It has firmness, but it is not too tidy, and you can really feel that American character in it.
In many cases, you only can see the character after dyeing, but even right after knitting, you can already feel that the fabric has something special. From there, it is processed further in different ways, which I think gives it an even deeper character.
So, whether we were making it in America or in Japan, the material and the texture have not changed at all. I think that proves just how high Japan's knitting technology is.
As you saw, one case weighs 120 kilograms, and that is a little difficult for our factory to handle. So we have the yarn divided by the winding company you saw, and after it has been divided, they apply wax to make it easier to knit and to reduce defects as much as possible. Once that comes into our factory, we are able to produce more smoothly than we could with the original yarn.
All of those steps have meaning. Since the yarn is spun in America, it of course does not fit Japanese standards as it is, so I do feel that these are necessary processes. Normally, you might think that anything can be knitted, but it is actually a very delicate process. The craftsmen thread the yarn one strand at a time, so even a slight difference in the thickness can make it impossible to knit or make it difficult to knit. Hearing that, I really felt that the people in the factory are going through a lot of trial and error before finally making it work.
It was definitely tough at first. In our case, we work with modified machines and equipment from various manufacturers. But ultimately, when it comes to producing fabric with the same texture, it doesn't matter whether a machine is old or new. There are still some that have their own quirks. Even with just one machine, figuring out how to get it to knit consistently is a challenge. Since we didn't know the answer at first, we had to experiment by adjusting various settings here and there until we found the best approach. It really took some time to get the hang of it in the beginning.
Until then, we had been knitting t-shirts with slightly thinner yarn. In other words, we thought that was the limit of what we could do. Then, by chance, the Good On t-shirt project came to us, and when we decided to try knitting it once to see if it was possible, we were able to do it.
In fact, the waxing is part of why it runs properly. If it were non-waxed, it would not run the way it does now. Even with the same yarn, applying wax makes it smoother and cleaner. They remove the wax, lint, and dust, and bring it to us in good condition. So there are parts of the process that only become possible because of that.
Even when the machine changes, you still have to make the same product, and I feel that the skill required to do that shows the high level of the craftsmen inside the factory. I can really feel how much trial and error they went through to achieve that.
The yarn itself is good yarn, but it is not necessarily 100% perfect. Sometimes a thick crosswise yarn can appear, so we try to detect that as early as possible and deal with it. It is not only the knitting. Inspection and checking are also done thoroughly, And that is what makes the product possible. Even if we keep data, the work is still done by human, so even when looking at previous records, mistakes can happen. For example, if similar numbers are lined up, people may misread them, seeing 6.66 as 6.69, or they may create a specification sheet based on an assumption and make a mistake. But in our place, I check all the work that someone else has done. I check whether the data is there, and I look at the previous specification sheets and verify all the numbers.
We never imagined that we would go to France. It made us happy to see that our efforts had been recognized and what we'd been doing wasn't wrong.
The reason Kanaya posted that was to make it clear what it was. It was a deliberate move.
Being able to say, "This is the kind of product we are making," changes motivation completely. And they can also proudly tell their friends about it, right? So we try to give that kind of feedback as much as possible and share it with everyone.
In this industry, there is a tendency for people to make lots of similar products. If something sells well, others want to make similar things. But I believe, in the end, the original products and the truly good products should remain. Trends definitely change, but the ones that keep doing the best work are the real. Those doing things halfway or take an easy approach quickly discontinue their products. So if they make products with confidence, and if we do our work properly, those products will remain. I really gained confidence from that.
Our feelings were conveyed to them, and they took action for us, so that was really good. Figuring out how to raise the product to the level the manufacturer is asking for, that, I think, is really the spirit of craftsmanship. It is the feeling of wanting to make it happen. They challenged something they had never done before, and it took a great deal of time. But when it finally took shape, we usually only see the finished product. It was only after hearing about it that I realized how much process and effort had gone into it. At first, the judgment was that it could not be done. Then they actually looked at the yarn and judged whether it really could or could not. It was something they had never tried before, so at the beginning, nobody knew how it would turn out. But the people in the factory actually took action, and I think that is what led to the success we have now.
When we talk about residual molecules or impurities, the fabric before bleaching is more of an ivory color. Ivory means a natural, unbleached color. So the process is about removing the color differences and making it pure white. After making it white, the dyeing factory adds color. The color of the fabric has already been made uniform to some extent before dyeing.
When we use fluorescent bleaching, we always include a neutralization process afterward. At that stage, we use acid to neutralize the alkali. We also use a hydrogen removing agent because residual hydrogen must not remain. In our case, if it remains, the applied dye can fade or cause various problems.
Unlike product dyeing, fabric is extremely long. When it is processed, about 120 meters are finished all at once, so the scale is really large. I had always wondered what kind of machine could do that, so being able to actually see it was really valuable. Understanding that mechanism was really instructive.
A long time ago, when my predecessor was still alive, I was told, "I will introduce you to another dyeing factory, so go and listen to what they have to say." So I went there. They said to me, "Can you plant rice on asphalt pavement?" It was like, "Ah, I see." In other words, when it comes to dyeing, the foundation is extremely important. They meant that even if you bleach the fabric, careless bleaching or careless neutralization will cause unevenness.
So, in the end, the foundation really is important.
Cotton is a living thing, so it inevitably changes every year. Whenever those kinds of issues come up, we always share them and discuss what we should do to bring the fabric to the same level of quality even when the condition has changed. I think every kind of yarn has its own difficulties, but thick American cotton yarn, so-called air-spun yarn, is often said to be difficult to handle. With slightly thinner yarn, it is much easier to knit and much more stable, so the bleaching process is easier. But Good-On's t-shirts use rough yarn, so that roughness changes every time. Even now, people still say that stabilizing it is very difficult.
There are 4 drums, and the fabric sticks to them as it passes through. By the time it comes out, it is dry. Even with that dryer, the fabric is fed in at the mouth. There is a belt, and the fabric rides on that belt. By increasing the speed of the belt, the fabric sticks to the drum and forms a wave. That amount is calculated. If you do it slowly, the drum pulls the fabric here, so it has the opposite effect. Even in the finishing process, we apply feed-in, and this is what is being done now. There is vertical tension during processing, right? By feeding it through a slightly wider frame and passing it through, the part that was stretched vertically gets pulled tightly to the side, so they run vertically. On the other hand, the shrinkage rate also improves. That is the idea.
Do you adjust all of that depending on the width of the fabric?
Yes, they're different. All of them are different. So, as a guideline, we use the set width as a reference and then adjust it to fit a frame that's a few centimeters wider. For example, if the set width is 70 centimeters, we spread it firmly and pass it through a frame of about 75 centimeters.
If the width does not stabilize easily, or if it has shrunk, we make it a little wider, do a rough pass first, and then run the main process.
You can see that the stitches are running diagonally like this. That means there is no distortion.
The craftsmen are always highly motivated to make good products every day. And I think their daily improvements are closely connected to their technical skill. I think that is what allows us to maintain the high quality we have now. In the end, our purpose, or what we are aiming for, is the same. We both want to make good products, so we are constantly communicating about what we should do.
First of all, we valued the customers most. There are times when something is urgent or difficult, but we try to respond as much as possible. Also, we try to avoid capital investment as much as possible.
After that, it's also about the trust we've built with our clients. It's not that we're doing things for them, but that we're allowed to do them. And likewise, not that we're making them do things, but that they're doing them for us. I think that is the kind of relationship we have.
Now that the number of dyeing factories has decreased this much, unless people value us and cooperate with us, we cannot continue. We used to argue a lot.
I think sincerity is the most important thing.
It is not that we are doing everything ourselves. Products can only be made because someone is willing to do something for us. If there is no one left, we can make nothing. I want to value this as much as possible and keep doing this.
Thank you for keeping in touch for so long through phone calls and text messages.
I think the parts that require the most attention are the front neckline curve and the back neckline curve. If someone who's not very skilled does it, the curves at the top and bottom may end up uneven. The top is certainly fine, but the bottom is slanted. That really comes down to the skill of the person. I think Honda is probably the only one in our company who does full hand cutting.
He is the only one at our company who can operate that machine. There are others who can do it, but I think Honda is the only one who can use it in his mind, as if it were his own hands and feet, at least in our factory now.
The t-shirt I'm sewing now starts from the 2 flat hems at the bottom. Then I sew the shoulders and attach the collar. Since there is covering on the front, we cover the front, attach the name label, do the binding, and attach the sleeves. Then we finish with the armhole covering, inspect it, and send it on to the packing section. My job is to prepare the next products according to the schedule, check whether the cut pieces and materials are ready, and review the patterns and specifications to get everything ready for the next production run. I also teach sewing methods to trainees and other Japanese staff.
Most of the time, the team leader teaches them, saying things like, "Do not pull this," or "Use a little less force here." After all, unless you actually move your hands and do it, you will not learn.
Even if someone teaches you, you don't learn it unless you try it yourself.
The most difficult part of sewing is adjustment. After hearing about it this time, I really felt that adjusting the sewing machine is extremely important. For good on, most of the yarn used is cotton yarn, and I think people at sewing factories really feel how difficult it is to sew with cotton yarn. It breaks easily, and because there is friction, skipped stitches can often happen. It is a yarn with many challenges like that. There are not many factories that can handle that. While there are plenty that can sew the fabric, very few can manage the process to ensure the required quality. So I think the fact that we've built that capability together right from the product development stage is what really contributes to the quality we achieve. That may really be the most important thing. Being able to touch the sewing machine, set it up, and adjust it by fractions of a millimeter can change everything. Each time, adjustments are needed, and sometimes you have to start over without knowing the cause. That is something they work on every day.
The stitches skip when the machine stops.
When it stops, the yarn loosens, and that can make it come off. Once it stops, the quality gets worse.
Now, the number of defective products has decreased quite a lot. You can't sew with cotton thread unless you have the proper skills. The factory manager often says the right person in the right place. If someone is fast at a certain part, we might assign that person there. If the flow does not work well when someone else is placed there, we may switch people and put in the person who is faster. We also ask Section Chief Yamamoto things like, what if we sew it this way? Or what if we do it that way? And how can we make it faster? We make small improvements like that. If one person were doing the same task the whole time, it would be fine to sit. But because each of us does one thing here and another thing there, it is faster to stay standing and move around. That is why we line up standing sewing machines. But your weight ends up leaning to the left, so it is tough at first.
We call it the 2 weeks of hell.
But you get used to it quickly.
You move around, right? So it is not that bad. It is good for your health too.
I do feel that it is a very efficient way of sewing. Normally, you think of using a sewing machine while sitting, but when you think about the movements involved in working, standing really does improve efficiency. I had heard that, but it wasn't until I actually saw it that I understood what they meant.
Ultimately, I think good products can be made if my dedication reach all the way to the sewing operators. But if the feelings stop at the management level, with the department managers or section chiefs, it do not reach the sewing operators at the end of the line, and the dedication no longer gets through. I explain up front that we can't move on to the next step unless we achieve certain things, and then I just let them do their work at their own pace. After all, work done reluctantly never yields good outcomes. I think the challenge right now is figuring out how to put that into practice. It's not about Be Good Company's work going smoothly, with no delays, stable production volumes, and zero defects. Even when we want to sew, we can't. Stitches skip, and if they deliver the work anyway, defects and repairs are inevitable. And yet we have to sew with cotton thread. Honestly, as a business-to-business relationship, we're on the verge of not getting along. But President Yamada's words really struck a chord with me. It was just those words. I'm counting on you, Ota-san. With that gentle smile. That's the thing that has kept us going until now. It might have been just a split second, but maybe it was thanks to those words. Normally, I think a company president would probably say, turn them down, don't do it, or ask someone else. Because Be Good also had no products just when things were about to gain momentum. But I met him again this year, and when he said, I'm counting on you, Ota, I thought that those might be words that changed me.
Factory manager Uchiyama also said this, but there are probably no other manufacturers out there doing this many colors with pigment. It may be the best in Japan, or even the best in the world. When you saw the site where they dye it, you probably noticed that everyone is always moving. It is very reassuring that they manage all of that.
Dyeing is often described as chemistry, but there is actually a great deal of craftsmanship in it as well. Among all the pigments I have handled over the years, there are definitely some with particular quirks. There are many different ways to do it, but we look at the color on our side and give instructions such as, do it this way, or do it that way. Some other dyeing factories have controllers, but in our case, everything is manual. For us, it is more of a simple kind of work. There is nothing like a control device attached. Dyeing, like anything else, will always cause problems if you do not approach it with care and affection. When we ask younger people to take on this work in the future, I think we will need to make sure that this kind of education is done properly.
As he said, pigments die through ionic bonding. The speed or slowness of that bonding changes depending on the color. If you do not recognize those differences and work accordingly, the fabric will not dye well. That is something they manage through experience. Even now, they are still improving it. Even with the same color, they keep researching ways to dye it more efficiently and more beautifully. So I really feel that it is evolving every day.
It is all about measuring the pigment. If you do not measure accurately, the color will definitely be inconsistent. So, I tell Seresta, it is fine if it takes time, so make sure you measure it properly. That is an absolute rule, and I tell them to stick to it. Everything begins with measuring time and quantities. I think that is the most important thing in dyeing.
As we were talking, I got the sense that dedication is really important. Even after 50 years, they still consider themselves half-baked, with a mindset of constant evolution. They never get satisfied, always think they can do better. They're driven by the belief that they can create something even better. That mindset is probably the most important. It's amazing that they can think that way. Even now, they still talk with each other about if there's a better way to improve the quality. It really comes down to dedication. That passion is something we have too, and because both sides have that feeling, we do not stop. We keep working because we think we can make something better. Being close to them, I really feel how important that feeling is. That can only lead to good products.
If you do not constantly challenge the way things are and start thinking this is good enough, then there is no progress. I think it is better to keep working while carefully judging whether it is acceptable or not.
The process is to dye the t-shirts, then finally inspect and finish them all the way through to bagging. During inspection, they check for uneven color and color variation, as well as the sewing. There are quite a lot of inspection points in the process, fabric wear marks and things like that. They check all of those things, and only after everything has passed. The items are tagged and bagged, then passed through a needle detector, and then they are sent on to the logistics warehouse. Because this is a very special kind of dyeing, the inspection skill, or the points you need to look at, are very difficult. It took a great deal of time to reach the current standard. It is the color, really.
It's difficult to put into a manual.
Pigment dyeing naturally has a processed look. So the only difference is the degree of that processed feel. It is really a matter of nuance. With t-shirts, I'm sure some people might look at the faded areas and think, it's turning white, isn't that a problem? But that is good on. That is the character. The light and dark tones change a lot each time, and that is where the nuance lies. Whether you call it unevenness or atmosphere, that is what we are looking for. We also make strong use of stitch. By adding stitches around areas like the sleeves, the worn-in look comes out more easily. So I think that becomes one part of the atmosphere you can enjoy. It took many years, but we have been aligning those sensory parts with each other.
At the inspection factory, they take photos every time and send them to Fukutome-san, asking again and again, "Is this okay? What do you think?"
That still continues even now. You cannot tell from words and photos alone. Even for us, there are parts that are very difficult unless we see the actual item. So to some extent, we draw a line and judge whether something is acceptable or not.
In the end, the pieces that are really difficult to judge and that we cannot figure out are sent to our company.
That is right.
All the good on-staffs check them together.
This really varies from person to person. Something may be okay for one person and not okay for another. There are many different opinions, so we take all of those into account and make the final judgment. We look at different points depending on the product, and sometimes there are more areas to check, but we go over everything. So many different people have put their hands into this t-shirt, and I think their feelings are packed into each and every one. That's why I really want to deliver these shirts to as many people as possible.